Nobody broke into my house last night, but I woke up this morning and this is a cinema camera now. This is a Red cinema camera now. The time has come. The king has come home to roost. Nikon bought Red. Now they have gone against my advice, which was to buy Insta360. Actually, some of the reasons why I wanted Nikon to buy Insta360 will be solved by acquiring Red. This is a good thing, I think, and I think a lot of great, cool, interesting stuff is going to come from this. I think the nerds won on this one, and I'm going to tell you a couple things about my journey with Nikon and video, and I'm going to tell you a couple things that I think are going to quickly happen that as a longtime Nikon video user, I think are the most important things to get done, maybe even in this first couple years as we take a look at what's going to happen. You know, even if you just check out Nikon in the first couple hours after this release, if you check out their social media, all they're doing is posting about wedding photography because there's a wedding photography event going on right now. And that makes total sense because that's their bread and butter. That's what they do. But they're not really embracing this just yet and posting about it on social media. And I think that will come with time, but I think it's a great indicator of where Nikon's priorities are. Look, they want more video action and they made a great move in order to get more video action, but it's going to be a long time before we start to see any of the interesting stuff happen from this acquisition. So if you want to skip to that section, go right ahead. First, I'd like to tell you a little bit about my journey with Nikon. The year was 2018. So at the time, I looked at what Sony and Nikon were offering and what Canon was offering, and I decided that Nikon had the best choice. One of the reasons was because they did not have a cinema line to cannibalize. They could put every single video feature they could possibly scrape together into the Z6, and that would be their best video camera, the top of the line video camera that this company can produce. I also really love Nikon because if you look at the FX3 and the R5C as cinema camera examples, you can see the cripple hammer hammering away at those camera bodies and not all of the features being put into them. You know, years later now, the FX3 is getting some needed cinema camera features such as shutter angle and anamorphic D-squeeze, and neither of those are in the Nikon body, so, you know, whatever. You compare the Z8 and the Z9 to the FX3 or the R5C, and you can clearly see, in my opinion, that the band hammer, the cripple hammer, does not exist, and those cameras have every single video feature possible thrown into them. Another reason that I got Nikon cameras over Sony or Canon was because I saw the popularity of the other two brands, and I was like, well, if I want my colors to look a little bit different straight out of camera, I can choose Nikon and not be exactly the same as most of the people that I see online. And years later, now I'm more involved with my camera community here locally, and there are a ton of Sony shooters. So at the very least, if I'm doing a quick turnaround video with my colors coming straight out of my camera or doing really light work, they do look a little bit different than the Sony and Canon people. So that was a differentiator that I was interested in at the time, and I'm happy that I did that because I do really love how Nikon stuff looks straight out of camera. All in all, I think people need to start putting respect on Nikon's name. Nikon is a cinema camera company now. I couldn't be more excited about that. Yesterday, I was a Nikon videographer. Today, I am a Nikon /Red cinematographer. I have been upgraded. This is now a cinema camera. I'm so excited to see what comes out of this. I think it's nothing but good things. I think Sony and Canon have been put on notice. I think Audiio has been put on notice. It'll be really interesting to see how this changes and shakes things up over time. The days of being able to put out an incremental upgrade and just have people buy it because they're brand loyal, I don't think that's going to happen anymore. In 2021, I was comparing the Sony FX6, the Canon C70, and the Red Komodo, trying to figure out which one of those would be the best choice for my more video focused camera that had more video features. You know, with the Z6 I was running into things like always having to run the Ninja V. I was running into problems like needing to power the camera with external batteries and that being a pain in the butt. I was running into problems where the record limit on the camera is only 30 minutes. You can't record ProRes or any kind of legitimate codec in camera. You can't get 10-bit footage unless you plug in an Ninja V. All of these problems were plaguing me and causing me slowdown, so I wanted to look into a more advanced video camera. In 2021, I was comparing the Sony FX6, the Canon C70, and the Red Komodo, the original one. And I ended up choosing the FX6. Sony has autofocus, auto NDs, a quick boot time, audio options that are a little bit more flexible than the original Komodo, focus breathing compensation, S-Cinetone, and options for different types of stabilization in post, and also stabilized lenses. The FX6 is meant to be used as a documentary style camera. It's meant to be used as a small crew or one person crew camera. When I look at the Red Komodo, that camera was designed for, to be a crash cam, but even if you were operating as a solo person, there were lots of small things that made that quite the challenge. And ultimately I chose the Sony because it felt like it was ready to be used as a single person using it, as a solo operator, which is what I am. Red cameras are really crew cameras. They're meant to be operated by more than one person, if not 4 or 5. I don't know this for sure, but when I did a quick Google search, I wasn't able to find a Red codec that was able to be quickly used and edited, maybe for a quick turnaround. And obviously, like, Red would be fine with me saying that because they're not meant for that. If you're going to use a camera, then you might as well use it and use Red code. That's why you buy a Red. But as a small videographer, I'm constantly bringing my production quality up and then bringing it down to meet the needs of my clients, because not everyone can pay for that full price stuff. And I'm not in a market where there's tons of abundant, really high-end cinema work. There's some, and I try to get as best I can, but there's not quite enough for me to justify just being an FX6 guy who shoots everything. What are 3 things that I would like to see from the Nikon Red merger? Now, there's lots of things that I'm really interested in. There's a huge question of the Red cameras having the RF mount, which they have very little control over, and how maybe they should switch to Z mount, maybe they should switch to PL mount. I don't know what should be done there, and I think that's going to take a long time for everyone to decide on. And I think if you're a Red shooter and you're upset about that, I just don't think it's going to matter for the next couple years here. For the most part, when you're looking at big boy cinema stuff, you're adapting to PL anyway, and the RF adapter and the new Z adapters that will come eventually are going to get you to the same place either way, so not super worried about that. But what are some things that I think could happen somewhat soon and or are the most important things to happen? So number 1, I want to see the most badass Red codec they can possibly fit in the Z8 and Z9. Those cameras are amazing. More and more people discover them every day and discover their awesome video features. And I believe that there is a codec that's not in there currently that could be really great. Something with compressed RAW, maybe it's a version of Red code, a new thing. Now, I don't want them to like compromise and just shove something in there with the Red brand name on it. I want them to take a look at the actual technology available and make a choice to choose something really, really cool and really, really great from the Red wagon to put into the Z8 and Z9. I really think there's some kind of upgrade that can happen there. And I think that would be a great way for them to kind of put a band-aid on this merger and just say, hey, here's something cool. The rest of the stuff is going to come way, way, way down the road. But right now, there's a better compressed RAW format in the Z8 and Z9. I think that would be awesome. If there was a way that all of the Red LUTs could fit onto the Nikon camera's footage, I think that would be great. But for the most part, Nikon generally doesn't have a lot of great LUTs. And I think being able to apply Red LUTs would be a great way to start getting some cool stuff going with the synergy between the 2 brands. The second thing that I'd like to see worked on right away is adding the Z8 and Z9 and maybe the Z6 III to the Red app. The technology that is in every camera, whether it's the Sony, the Nikon cameras, the Red cameras, I think it's pretty basic Wi-Fi technology. And I think with firmware updates, we could get a Nikon camera running that great Red software. People talk about it all the time, how much they love being able to control their Red cameras with their iPads and phones, and SnapBridge sucks. It sucks terribly. It's not useful. It doesn't connect reliably. Half the features are unreliable and I can barely use it, even though I totally want to. And when I just look at a screenshot of the Red app, I can see how everything is perfectly designed. And it just seems very silly for camera companies to be putting out crappy apps in 2024. Like, hire a software team, get this going. This is important. People care about this. Not only does Red have an amazing free app on the App Store, but they also have this awesome app that you pay $500 for and can run on iPad and Mac and can control multiple Red cameras that are connected to a network. This is an amazing idea, and the idea of running a multicam from an iPad with great technology to either plug in Ethernet ports or have good Wi-Fi connection so that you can view and change settings on your multicam production is really incredible. The third thing, and this may take a while, but the third thing that I would love to see is Nikon cinema lenses. To my knowledge, I don't think Red has ever made cinema lenses. But obviously there are benefits if you can make first-party cinema glass and have it run directly into your camera. There's electric contacts you can do. There may be an autofocus type thing or LiDAR type thing that can happen. But Nikon is a lens manufacturer. They make lenses and they also make some cameras every once in a while. So I want to see what the Nikon engineers do with a cinema lens. I just want to see what they would do. It would be awesome. I think the technology that they would integrate would be great, but I also just think it's going to be a good lens. And for right now, if they could make a PL lens that works on Z bodies, that works on Red bodies, I think that would be another great way to marry everything together and also add another first-party lens manufacturer into the cinema glass game. Only good things can happen from that. There'll be more competition for other first-party manufacturers such as Canon, and there will be more competition for all of the budget creators like Nisi and DZO and all of these other people. Having Nikon make cinema lenses is going to be a super awesome thing. A few more things that I think should be worked on relatively soon are adding the autofocus algorithm from the Z9 to Red cameras. This is another thing where it's like hardware. I don't know if that's possible, but obviously that's going to happen at some point. But as soon as possible, that subject recognition, the subject shift, eye autofocus, body autofocus, I want to see all of those things in a Red camera. And obviously that's going to happen at some point, but I want to see it as soon as possible. Another thing I want to see is a cinema operating system in a small mirrorless camera. Just like the FX3 and the R5C are some kind of cinema focused hybrid, I would love to see Nikon's take on that or Red's take on that. I don't know which way they want to swing things. Another thing I want to see is I want to see them create an awesome external monitor experience like Red. There's a small HD 7-inch monitor that can run all of Red's operating systems from the touchscreen, which I think is really cool. I use the Ninja V on my Nikon camera all the time, and the core functionality works, but it's not a lovely experience. And I'd love to see how a first-party situation could make that way, way, way better. I want to see things like being able to tap to focus on the monitor. That would be awesome. Be able to change settings from the monitor so you can tuck your small screen away and just use a 5-inch or 7-inch monitor so you can see everything. Settings, great image quality, focus and exposure tools. I would love to see all of that. Whatever it is you want to use, whether that's an iPad, an iPhone, a Mac, a small HD monitor, a Nikon or Red monitor, whatever you need at the time, you have options to choose from and you can pick the best one for each situation. I'd also love to see a cinema style viewfinder that works on the Z8, Z9, and maybe the Z6 III. I think that would be a great option to add to the Nikon cameras and once again make people take them more seriously as really great hybrid cameras. This is great. This is good news. I'm excited to see how everything pans out. I think this is going to be good for the community, good for the production world. I think that's going to be nothing but great outcomes for everybody.